Now, keeping with the decommissioning theme now, the UK's decommissioning experience and expertise is in demand right across the world, and this opens up potential opportunities for UK businesses. In Germany alone, there's a £38 billion programme to decommission its entire nuclear fleet. This session is going to look at some of those opportunities as well as the challenges that go with them if they're the kind of opportunities you want to go and grab. So please welcome our next panel to the stage to discuss that. We have Linda Ashton, Principal Consultant Nuclear Waste Management at Atkins. Greg Willetts, Vice President Consultancy Clean Energy Europe at Amec Foster Wheeler. Andy Hooper, Managing Director, Westlakes Engineering Limited. Rebecca Weston, Strategy and Technical Director, Sellafield Limited. And Mark Rouse, Business Manager, Japan at Cavendish Nuclear. Thank you for coming up. Thank you very much for volunteering for the panel. And before we open it up to questions from the floor. Again, a lot of people won't know all of you, so can I just quickly go down the line and ask you to introduce yourself and give me an overview of your thoughts in terms of exporting in this field.
Okay, so Mark Rouse, I'm the Business Director for Cavendish Nuclear in Japan. Been doing that about a year, and my background is slightly strange for the nuclear industry. I've spent 20 years plus in nuclear submarines, building, refueling, repairing them. But in 2013, I jumped at an opportunity to go and be the managing director of Dounreay. And that's when I first met David Fleer and some of the community up there and began to realise what an international name places like Dounreay are. Met a lot of Japanese people, a lot of foreign international people who came to the site, and we began to realise there's something that the UK is doing that the rest of the world hasn't quite got to yet, and particularly places like Dounreay with the complexity. There was a conversation to engage in. I finished that job about a year ago. My boss obviously thought Dounreay wasn't far enough away, so let's send Mark to Japan. And I've been learning a lot and about how to engage with that culture and understand it as a different culture and what works and what doesn't. So more about that in the questions, I think.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark.
Rebecca Weston, Strategy and Technical Director at Sellafield Limited, so business with a 100-year event horizon. So my role covers the day-to-day technical support and right out to the long-term business and technical strategy. Big part of that is really about the innovation and the R&D that potentially challenges the baseline that currently costs the UK a lot of money. In terms of exporting, it's not Sellafield's focus. It's very much focused on the high hazard risk reduction at the site, and we saw a couple of examples John was talking about in terms of the silos at the site. But the site does do a lot of interesting things. It is a test bed, if you like. It has a range of challenges, I suppose, unparalleled in the nuclear sector, and I think. In terms of the exporting, what is interesting is how Sellafield potentially acts as an enabler for the supply chain in terms of testing out innovations, technology, and indeed creating a business pull for actually sort of delivering some of those innovations in a licensed site.
Lovely, thank you. Andy.
Okay, so I'm Andy Hooper, Managing Director of Westlakes Engineering. We're a civil structural design consultancy that's specialised in the nuclear industry and based next door to the site at Sellafield. Currently, we export around 50% of our turnover, but not in the nuclear industry. I've done a handful of projects in nuclear decommissioning abroad, and whenever we do that, you get struck by that we undervalue the sort of knowledge and experience that we have as a business, and we can go and get involved in projects where we've done them before. Somebody else, it's the first time they've ever had to deal with these things. So I think as the sort of UK, we could do a lot more in terms of export and selling our skills.
Thank you, Andy. Greg.
Okay, I'm Greg Willetts. I'm Vice President for Consultancy for Amec Foster Wheeler Clean Energy Europe. The clue's in the title, Europe. So we do exports. I'm responsible for technical consultancy, nuclear consultancy, including laboratories, test rig facilities, remote engineering, so specialist R&D, and also the defence nuclear industry. So I think in terms of export, the UK has got huge capability, not just decommissioning in a number of areas, and there are huge opportunities out there, and it's just really good business. And so I think that together, the supply chain, SMEs, Sellafield Limited, NNL, NDA, together, it's a really powerful selling point to our customers.
Thank you, Greg. And Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Ashton. I work for Atkins and I'm based in the Bristol office. I'm a technical director and I work in the strategy and business development team. But in terms of background, I did a PhD in radiochemistry and nuclear waste management. I decided in the late 90s that at the time we weren't really looking at a new build program. Everything was sort of on the decline. But I decided that the back-end waste management was actually one of the key areas in terms of what we had to do. And if we were to have a new build programme, one of the issues that we'd have to address would be waste management. So I thought all of those years ago that that was probably going to be the best decision that I could make in terms of longevity in the industry. And the industry has been phenomenal for me, a little bit like Adrienne. I was 14 when Chernobyl happened, and I just thought that wouldn't have happened on my watch. So I made sure that I got involved in it, and yeah, from the age of 15, decided that nuclear chemistry and nuclear science was for me. In terms of Atkins and exports, Atkins is a multidiscipline design house, and we're really in three strands. So we've got energy, infrastructure and transport, and the majority of our export really has been in the energy sector rather than nuclear. But as many of you probably are aware, this year we did acquire part of Energy Solutions, PP&T, and we are looking at that as a means of making inroads into the international market.
Thank you very much. So raise your hands if you have a question for our panel. And meanwhile, if I don't see any hands, we will get on and have a bit of a chat as well. Linda, I wanted to start with you. I said at the beginning about you know, there being big opportunity in Germany, decommissioning the whole of their fleet with possibly a £38 billion price tag on that. Where do you see other big opportunities in decommissioning coming up?
Atkins has recently restructured. So previously we used to be very much sector focused. So we would have an area looking at, or a team looking at the nuclear sector, or a team looking at oil and gas. And we've actually restructured in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, and we've started becoming regionally focused. And Atkins has tended to have a very clear target. And we look at things like partnering, acquisition, or we look at using the wider Atkins I suppose the wider Atkins portfolio and leverage to get into other countries. And I suppose in terms of, we've got 4 areas. So we've got the UK and Europe, which I'm predominantly focusing on. And like you said, Germany is a big market for that. I mean, one of the other things is that we recognise that there are some markets that have got such a pedigree themselves that, you've only got so much effort that you can put in. So there are some countries such as France, which we wouldn't look to maybe target in the same way as we would look at other European countries. Like I said, we've taken on, we acquired PP&T, partly because some of the, some regions are actually very technically and technologically driven, so they actually would like innovation and technology. They want a solution rather than just lots of front-end feasibility studies. They actually want delivery of a total solution. So, and that's really worked for us. So in terms of acquiring that, the US and North America is now a tangible market for us. So we have decommissioning projects at Chalk River. We've also, with AECOM, partnering is a really big part of decommissioning. And so we're working with AECOM on Hanford, and that's a 10-year programme, and it's worth about $7 billion. Like everybody else, the Asia-Pacific market is very interesting for a variety of reasons. So in China, an awful lot of domestic support, and obviously there is Japan in terms of clean-up for Fukushima, but also in supporting the restart of their nuclear fleet. I mean, one of the things is, Japan is going through a major restructure itself in terms of impacts and outputs because of Fukushima, and it's having massive implications in the Japanese market. And then we've also got the Middle East. Now, the Middle East is obviously starting its programme, and you can turn around and say, well, it's obviously then not really got any decommissioning to be thinking about. But actually, one of the key things from all of the programmes that we've ever done is about looking at total life cycle. So with Amec and with FANA and with NAWA, we are looking at supporting them in how they go about making sure that they've got the infrastructure, how they've got the financing models, how they've got the supply chains that are going to be required many, many years hence for when they do start to decommission, recognising waste management is a huge part of that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Linda. Lots of opportunities there. Mark, can I just ask you to expand a little bit on Japan? Because with about 50 plants needing decommissioning in about the next 40 years or so, what opportunities do you think there may be for UK involvement in that process?
So I think in terms of the overall decommissioning, there's a huge opportunity for us, but we've got to be patient. If we look at the programme there, you're probably talking another 10 years before they seriously get into decommissioning their reactors. And that's a great period of time to start to get to know our Japanese colleagues, to understand what's a different language and what a different culture really means and how they go about their business. I've been fortunate enough to go out to Fukushima, and that really brings home to you what a world-sized event that was. And that as part of that nuclear community, yes, there's business to be had there, but there's also a moral responsibility to get involved, to understand, and help in our small way do that. And that's a great place to build those relationships and really understand. And the second part is just to get to understand what is it we do, what is unique about the UK's business that we've actually done these things. The Japanese are very good at an awful lot of things, but they've never done decommissioning. So just distilling it down into what is that unique offering that we can take and engage and avoid summit fever, I think. Just be patient and build a business that could be absolutely huge for the UK in the long term.
Rebecca, did you want to add?
I wanted to build actually on that in terms of the relationship with the Japanese and obviously the events at Fukushima. But subsequent to that, there was Sellafield have a non-commercial memorandum of understanding with TEPCO on the basis of helping support at Fukushima, and that's very much about the experience that we've had as an operator in dealing with kind of legacy issues and so on. I think it actually does really enable what Mark's talking about there and almost offer an opportunity for the UK supply chain to get engaged sort of through that. So I suppose a couple of examples where TEPCO have brought sort of UK technology on board. So and again, firms sort of local to the Sellafield area. So James Fisher Nuclear, for instance, their ROV technology that really made big strides in some of our legacy ponds are working out there and establishing a base and then establishing a long-term relationship.
So getting to know you, definitely.
Yes,
yeah.
I think so.
Lovely. Any questions from the floor? Or shall we carry on? We're having a nice discussion here. Oh, we've got a question here as well. Just getting the microphone to you. Thank you very much.
Simon Tolson, Fenwick Elliott Solicitors. We've been talking about fixed assets in terms of nuclear reactors, but in terms of mobile reactors and legacy issues with shipping and with nuclear submarines, etc., of which there are obviously going to be a very large quantity, and reading in journals, etc., one's heard about the old USSR Russian fleet. What about decommissioning and the scale of that in terms of commercial reality?
Who'd like to take this one on?
Well, I suppose I've got a little bit of a nuclear submarine background.
Go on then, go for the nuclear submarine background.
And I'd start by reflecting on the unique position that the NDA puts the civil industry in. To have a construct such as the NDA that has been funded and is able to drive programs through is quite unique, and it's a discussion that happens in Japan about how do they do that. One of the problems we have in the UK is there is no NDA for the submarine fleet. So there are discussions going on with the company I used to work for about how do we take the submarines forward and decommission them. But without that NDA construct, it becomes a little bit harder to drive the commercials. And again, we'll see that in Japan. Fukushima is a government-led initiative, but the individual power stations are individual commercial entities. So they will have a similar problem. It is an exercise that only costs you money, decommissioning, unless you've got the power of the government behind you. So, small insight.
Does that answer your question? In as far as it can be answered.
And of course, if you look at Russian submarines, you get into some tricky government-to-government issues in that respect.
Yeah. So there are a whole lot of decommissioning plans going on around the world over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And we've spoken about them in terms of opportunity. Andy, you were saying earlier about how in demand UK expertise is in the decommissioning area, and how you have sort of successfully exported that, if you like. But if you're going to do that, what kind of challenges happen? We've heard about the challenges of understanding the needs of a different country with a different culture. Are there any other hurdles if a UK company decides to go and grab a piece of the international decommissioning market? What are the challenges involved there?
I mean, for companies such as ourselves, we're a small business, they're self-imposed, really. There's a, you know, all of our work is based on relationships, and you've got to go and invest time and effort into those relationships. So, and there are practicalities in terms of doing that outside the UK. It's a lot easier to do it in the UK. So you know, we have that kind of issue. Where we do export, we tend to be led by our clients, or we're part of a team. So we're very happy to do that. We enjoy doing it, but we're reliant to an extent on collaborating with others to do that. And I think as the UK, again, we could collaborate far more and present a far more united front in terms of working internationally.
There's some sage nodding going on. Do you want to?
I was going to say, I think what you need to do, the larger companies, it's incumbent on the larger companies to bring in the supply chain and take that supply chain with them on export. But also, in the end of the day, this is the customer who's got an issue. So it's just like working in the UK. It's how you bring the best team together and use all the relationships that you can to get, if it's technology or if it's an innovative way of doing things. I think what we need to do, the larger companies need to partner more and work together for those export opportunities, bring in the SMEs, but also leverage the expertise of Sellafield and NNL and the NDA and put the best UK foot forward.
Yes, the word collaboration is starting to be used a lot. Linda, how important do you think it is, this collaboration in bringing together the best?
I think decommissioning lends itself to partnerships and collaborations for a whole variety of reasons. Fundamentally, the breadth of what you have to deliver is huge. So whether it be from almost front-end feasibility and strategies, going through to costing, going through to actually supplying pieces of kit and looking then at environmental, doing the sign-off to show that the end point, whatever that may have been, determined as, has been reached. So there is such a colossal breadth of skills that are required for decommissioning. And also, as we've discussed a number of times today, decommissioning programs take time. And, as much as Humphrey, Duncan and Tom talked about how part and parcel of their enormous project is about engaging with the community and developing that level of true trust, that goes with any project, and any partnership that we do as Atkins also requires those within the consortia or the collaboration or even subcontractors. It doesn't matter. You've got to have a relationship with them, and that relationship is going to be better if it is mature. And so, like recently, we've talked about Sellafield, and active JV nuclear, which is a collaboration with Atkins, Carillion and Jacobs. It's been going on for about 12 or 13 years. And last month it won the NDA Collaboration Award. And that comes because over that length of time, you're honest with each other. You fully understand that not everybody has the same drivers, and you're working together. And not just the three entities in that. Obviously, you're working with Sellafield as well, but you're also working with the local and the national supply chain, giving them experience and bringing them through. And that kind of partnership is the only way in which you can deliver successful projects, both in the UK and internationally.
Thank you. Do chip in here with questions. If you have any questions, raise the hand. We've got a question right at the back there.
Afternoon, Steve Barrett, DCITB. Can I just thank the panel and say it's great to hear about people appreciating the challenges with skills going into decommissioning. One of the studies I did probably about 10 years ago with Magnox was looking at some of the cultural challenges going from operations to decommissioning, and actually a lot of the skills issues we had nailed, but the safety culture was a major problem. How do you think we should address those issues as we do take some of the EDF fleet into decommissioning, etc., and various other programs around the world?
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch your name there.
Steve Barrett.
Thanks. Would you like to take this?
Yes, it was one of the lessons we learned big time at Dounreay, that transition from operations to the decommissioning mindset, as we call it, is a huge part of decommissioning effectively and safely. We've talked a little bit to our Japanese colleagues about this, and really it's slightly too early. They're very interested in the technology and what experience we've got of doing jobs, but they're not quite ready to talk about a bigger, broader subject about the mindset. They're starting to ask us a few questions, but we're just listening to the body language and the responses and saying, this is too early in the relationship. This gets into interesting territory of, well, we're now saying we can do something better than you, which is the other way of saying you do something worse than us. And you have to be very, very careful when you're building these long-term relationships. So it's on the plot. It's interesting, we've been talking to Taiwan a lot lately. Culturally, they're more ready to have that conversation. Plus the fact that in community terms, in Taiwan, they are decommissioning their whole plants. So like Dounreay, like a lot of the outlying Magnox stations, they're shutting down a whole community. In Japan, you tend to have a decommissioning site, a shutdown, hopefully restarting site, and a new build site. So the economics, the socio-economics are very different.
But is it really saying, here is something that we can do better than you? Or is it just simply saying, here is something we have done and done successfully?
I think we say it with that intent and very honestly, but sometimes it is heard very differently. I'm finding out the hard way often that we don't get a lot of response from some of our colleagues. Culturally, they don't tell you when you've got things wrong, and you have to spend a lot of time listening and correlating with our colleagues from the NDA in country, with partners in country, to really understand how things are being heard when we say them.
I think also, with that, there's a lot of value as well in that, when we started the decommissioning programme, I know that we started it in earnest maybe sort of 20 years ago. But actually we started in the 1960s with the decommissioning of the GLEEP reactor. And, things like records, understanding of how materials were processed afterwards, what sort of condition they were left in. There is all sorts of uncertainty with that. And I think, the approach that you can take with a culture that, as we've discussed, isn't likely to or open to challenge, is to actually sometimes be really honest and say, these were the issues that we had, and if we could have changed it, or if there is one thing that we could have done differently, it was to understand what our inventory was and have confidence in it in day one, then, that's a different kind of conversation that you're having with them, because what you're then saying is, we invested and our materials became a challenge and a legacy because of things that we, with hindsight, would have done differently. And you've got that chance to do that right now.
Thank you. Greg?
You can't be arrogant about this. The UK doesn't do everything. You've got to focus on what we do well and, as you say, learn from the mistakes, explain what the UK has done, good and bad, and be honest about it. And try not to learn by mistakes. But I think also I think you get into a fundamental why we're doing export, and you learn also different ways of doing things in different countries to bring back to the UK. So we haven't got the kind of all the great ideas in the UK. And for companies going to export, you've got to be very, very clear about what your differentiator is, what you do that is unique, that you can sell abroad. If you just go in and say, we can do everything, we're great, you're not really going to achieve very much.
Thank you. Hopefully that answers your question. I believe we had a question down here. Yes. Can we get a microphone over here? Where's the microphone gone? There we go. Thank you.
Thanks very much. David Fleer, Dunray Stakeholders Group. Interesting hearing John Clark's retiring. We seem to be seeing a lot of people who are in the nuclear industry now retiring. And if we're exporting our skills and our knowledge to other countries, do we have a skills backup in this country to ensure that we still have the ability to decommission in this country?
So continuity of our exports if we're going to start exporting our expertise.
Just a quick one on that. I think we're talking about attracting people into the industry. Exporting is fun. Exporting is interesting for young people. It's exciting. You go and do new opportunities, new customers. That will attract more skills into the industry. Obviously, you can't spread ourselves too thinly, but it's good to attract people into the industry, I think.
Good. Rebecca's nodding.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that, and I think certainly from a Sellafield perspective, there's real benefit in having both our own employees, but also supply chain companies that have got experience elsewhere and bringing that back to bear, so that the kind of learning piece that Linda was talking about and Mark, I think we can't do enough of that in terms of sort of learning from mistakes. There are many mistakes we've made, and it will save us a lot of money in the long run if we can pass that learning over generations.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, we have a question over here on the aisle.
Thanks. Steve Wood. It's more of a point, really, rather than a question, just picking up this thing of collaboration. As most of the panel knows, that when I was at React, we took the first contract into Fukushima, and we were a very, very small company. We could not have done that without support from Rebecca's team, sort of justifying to the Japanese that this is what happens at Sellafield. And from the NDA, INS there, facilitating us to actually get in front of the right people. But the point I want to make is that they'll have it, the Japanese will have it if they need it, but they don't understand the mindset of decommissioning. And just picking up what the panel's saying there, that relationship of getting an understanding of the decommissioning mindset over there is a tough battle. And I think we're a long way away from that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Any more comments, questions? We have another question over here.
Hello, can I ask another question? Sorry, I missed the beginning of the panel. I apologise, I had to go out. Did you discuss much about German decommissioning? It seems that I only heard Japan and possibly Taiwan, and I was at an equivalent meeting about 3 years ago in Germany of the German nuclear organised companies and their association. Huge amount of expertise in German decommissioning, obviously a political priority because of the policy of energy Wende. I mean, is there any liaison between British firms and German firms? And who, the oversight here, the NDA, does the NDA relate to the equivalent organisation in Germany? And are there any mutual areas of interest, or is it post-Brexit not really worth going there?
Was that directed at Linda?
Anyone.
At anyone? Okay. So liaison with Germany over decommissioning and the expertise that already exists there.
I mean, there are some relationships that have already been developed with the UK and German partners. For instance, the Magnox reactors have been that their waste has been conditioned using German technology, And so the likes of GNS and Simplecamp have come over to the UK with their technologies, and those relationships have been established over the last decade or so. And the likelihood is obviously that relationship puts you on the front foot in terms of looking at opportunities that are there. I think going into a country which has got a very mature nuclear program itself, that sees itself as being incredibly reliant, it is going to always be a tough nut to crack. And so it is utilisation of those relationships. And yes, they came, for those particular two organisations, they came over here first. They have also learnt from the requirements that we have in the UK over those in Germany, and taken some knowledge back, as Greg was talking about. That's what we would intend to do. So that's, in terms of Atkins, we would, in the short term, that's the kind of approach that we would be looking at, because we would see that has more of a chance, because you've got that relationship already, and you've also got a very clear idea of your strength, your areas of strength between the two different organisations.
Thank you. And dare I ask very, very quickly for a comment on whether Brexit might put a spanner in the works of working with other European countries on this, or do we just not know yet?
There's a huge part of we don't know. Looking at the details, Euratom will be affected by the Brexit. That appears to be the way it's going to work. That's more to do with moving fuel around, I think, in terms of international. In terms of us exporting to Japan and other countries, it really shouldn't affect us. We're selling our expertise, the knowledge of our people, so that shouldn't be affected. Maybe shipping of fuel is a slightly different thing.
But consultancy, probably fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to be positive and just push forward.
Right. Well, thank you very much to our panel. Thank you to Linda, Greg, Andy, Rebecca and Mark for joining me this afternoon.